And welcome everyone to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about nothing. And for today's topic, we will be talking about the nature of heroes and villains for your amusement and entertainment. And now your host, Revenge of Romina. And your second host, Audrey the Annihilator. And your final host, who considers himself the Dark Lord of the interwebs, Roberto the Rebel. Welcome to the No Assembly Required podcast, filmed in front of a live YouTube audience. Please like and subscribe at youtube.com/noassemblypod.
That was pretty intense.
Yeah, it was a little scary, actually. Are we the heroes or are we the villains?
Well, we all know that Roberto's the villain for sure. That's already.
Well,
but is
is that true? Am I? Is being a villain? Let me ask you something.
He doesn't have bad
the argument that the villain
to Romina's point,
is it classic villain argument?
Is it intent or is it the deed? Is it your intention or is it the deed? Because to Romina's point, do I have bad intentions, Romina?
I mean, not that I know of.
I just want a better world for everyone. And
That's what Thanos said.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, guys. We can have one beautiful, united world or none at all. And that's a choice.
You're sounding a lot like
It's a little scary. It's a little scary.
Classic villain ever.
I mean, well, here's the thing. So I'm not going to tell Roberto that he's not the villain or that he is the villain because I don't want to be on his bad side. You know, when he becomes...
Okay, it's been established. I don't need any more proof.
If you're listening to this podcast, please give us 5 stars. Or Roberto will find you. Yeah, I mean, you know, if he's doing bad things in the name of something good, does that make him a villain or a hero? Yes. Wait, what?
That's like classic. That's what Thanos did. He's like, I went to save the universe, and then he killed half of them in the process.
Well, he didn't kill them. He eliminated them from reality. He snapped them out of existence. He didn't actually kill them.
Snap them out of existence.
Where are they? Well, we don't know.
They're not. They just don't exist.
For all we know, they could exist in the Soul Stone. That was a theory that they all just paralleled into the Soul Stone, and that's where they were preserved and why they could be snapped back. So that was one theory. Another theory in the comics is that you go into a parallel mirror dimension, and so there's that.
They're still gone, even if they can be snapped back. He doesn't want to snap them back.
Well, no, I mean the fact that they could be at all, like.
Yeah. Roberto.
Roberto representing Thanos in court. Thank you.
In defense of Thanos.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could argue that there are certain figures in history, which I don't want to get political here. It's like the furthest thing that I want to do right now. We get enough of that every day.
Please, God, no. This podcast is our escape hatch.
Right. But there are certain figures in history who have committed crimes in the name of something good, for the greater good, for humanity.
Would you guys consider Alexander the Great a humanitarian?
Roberto, I said I wasn't going to name names here. And the first thing
that's
you
not
do
political. That's not political, though. So
right,
it
okay.
gives you the escape. No, it's not. Alexander the Great is not political.
Okay. It's far enough past. Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
So is Alexander the Great a villain or a hero? Is he someone who is a villain of history because of atrocities and the body count, and the being the king of conquerors, or does he deserve a place on the throne of heroes?
I don't remember enough about him.
He literally conquered pretty much the known world, and basically every time he conquered a place, it was join me or die, but in exchange, you get to keep your customs and cultures as long as they don't contradict the law of the empire And he also replicated a library of Alexandria in every major city-state that he conquered. And he was generous to those who joined him and pledged fealty. And again, if you turned down his generous offer, he annihilated you down to the last man.
See, I think I'd consider him a villain then. Because I feel like a hero would... Were these people dying before he showed up?
They were warring with each other for centuries, and and when he conquered them, they stopped warring, which means they stopped having senseless battles that were killing innocent civilians.
Like, fight them in order to...
Yeah, because that was the only language that these knuckleheads understood clearly. They understood the rule of might makes right. They understood the rule of power. And he, being an enlightened individual, realized, I can't reason with these fools, but they understand power and authority, so I'll speak to them in the language that they understand. And when he conquered them, you know who prospered? The peasants prospered. The merchants prospered. They were able to trade. People were able to be educated. Commerce flowed. He then also went so far as to say groups of people from the east and the west, he'll do transmigration so that these people who've been warring with each other will now have ancestral ties to each other because they'll intermingle, and now all of these feuds over their differences could evaporate because they're kin now. And again, because he was the emperor, he could make them do it because they clearly weren't going to get to that reasonable conclusion on their own. And so I think we know my stance.
Wait, how about this then? We need both like villains and heroes for things to like for the world to work properly.
But sure, yin and yang.
Elaborate, Audrey. I like this. This is interesting.
So, like, for example, if they wouldn't have cooperated and overall it became a better society after he bulldozed through, so maybe it would be like overall the outcome was positive, like down the line. I'm sure at the time they probably were not happy about being colonized, but down the line, maybe it was.
Well, it wasn't colonization; it was imperialism. So they were brought into the collective empire. They weren't colonies, and they weren't excluded. They were given full rights as citizens of the empire. And the thing is, he eliminated a lot of the discrimination that their own states had within there because you weren't allowed to have those practices because it contradicted the overall rule of law of the empire. So a lot of the shady shit, nope, illegal now because you're citizens of the empire.
Well, see, so if it was a good final outcome, that's why I'm saying like maybe villains are necessary because I don't.
A lot of people stopped fighting him eventually and just said please. A lot of people even rose up and said, "Hey, overthrow our asshole king. Come in here."
I guess what differentiates them maybe is like intent. You know?
So
or like
good intent, even if you have to do horrible things, the ends justify the means.
Who decides? Well, I think what it is who decides what is the good intent here.
History is written by the victors.
I don't know. I mean, that's like it's all up in the air. There isn't like a concrete right or wrong.
So is it down to your results, or does it really matter how you get there? Like,
at what cost, Roberto? At what cost?
Like, what if instead of Alexander the Great, someone went through like a Gandhi, and he was just like peaceful and kind of like, come on, guys, like let's all like form up.
It already happened. It's called Attila the Hun. It didn't work. It already happened. It's called Attila the Hun.
Okay.
He was not a benevolent version of Alexander. He wasn't a benevolent version of Alexander. He was like...
Yeah, well, let's just say there was like a benevolent version of him, and it didn't work. And
well, again, why wouldn't it work? Or why? How did that happen?
Like,
and what's not working look like?
I was saying, like, I think a hero wouldn't do something that involves like killing or forcefully putting on their views onto other people, even if they think it's for the greater good. Like a hero would kind of work like together and be more about
and when they fail miserably and people suffer because a villain doesn't have those scruples and wants to graft their ideals onto the world, even if it means inflicting suffering and hardship on the many, because that villain wants to elevate their chosen few. What good did the hero do by holding up their morals and their values and their desire to be perceived as good, but to fail in the face of challenging true evil, how did that help anybody for the hero to fail by looking noble?
Well, I think there's always like a way to positively try and solve a problem.
Okay,
It might be really difficult.
I
to
have
do.
an example. Okay, I have a scenario, not an example. Scenario. Let's say that there's a group of 20 people, right? 20 people. They're all in a box here in a room. And these 20 people, if they die, then 1 million people will live. And but that would mean that you survive, the one person. So you survive, the 1 million people survive, but the 20 people die. But now let's say that you live and those 20 people get to live because you saved them, but then those other 1 million people die. How do you choose who gets to live and who gets to die?
Easily, I saved the 1 million people every single time without question. It doesn't matter who the 20 are.
What if it's a bus of school children, Roberto?
It's 20 people versus 1 million. There's going to be 20 school children in that 1 million. I'm going to do it. And here's the thing. And someone say, oh, it's people you know, you people you love, and everything like that. I still do it. And here's the thing. It's like, it's a lot harder to just live and agonize over not saving or condemning 1 million people. That's like a thing, and that's an issue of, if you have a conscience, it's worse. If you don't have a conscience, you still go there. If you have a conscience, 1 million people's blood on your hands versus the 20 in front, 1 million strangers, even versus 20 you know, it's still too big. It's still too much. If you have a conscience, and if you don't have a conscience, you still do it because the math plays out.
Okay, but now let me frame it to you this way. What if nobody knows except for you that if you choose to live, those 20 people will die, but the 1 million will live? So
even if nobody knows, let's say this, even if nobody knows,
you're going to be framed as the villain.
And that's fine, because I still did the right thing by 1 million people instead of worrying about how people feel about me.
Right, but according to Audrey, if Audrey would be in that group of people who didn't know, so she would frame you as the villain on the premise of you killing those 20 people.
And I guess I'm just the damn
Well, if you told me the full concept, I would.
But you will never know. You don't get to.
Concept.
Here's the
That's
thing.
The point.
You don't know. You never get to know. And that's the thing about, like, again, that's the thing about judging purely on deed, or even if you don't know people's intent, or even, here's the thing, you can never know what the story or what the motivation was, because, by the way, especially even if the hero loses, think about it, is there no historical example or context where the hero was framed purposely as the villain by the actual villains? Joan of Arc comes to mind.
True.
Joan of Arc comes to mind. You can be framed as the villain. Do you think, honestly, in any conquest, in any thing, in any colonialization, in any war, that the victors ever allowed themselves to be held accountable for all the horrible shit they did and to be framed as anything but the heroes of the day?
Right.
Vanquishing the evil of their time as they believed it to be? We have to go through a lot of trouble. We have to go through a lot of trouble to even reimagine people that historically have been victors and say that maybe just because they won doesn't make them the good guys. We never think about it, historically. How often historically have we looked at the winners and said those were bad hombres, those were the bad dudes, those were desperados, those were not cool, those were how often have we ever decided to retroactively audit the hero, the victor, the person who won, and say, maybe you shouldn't have, maybe you were the bad guy, even if I benefited from your victories, maybe, just maybe, you legit were straight up the bad guy, you were straight up the devil here.
So
it comes down to the framing. What was that, Audrey?
I was just like, maybe there is no like clear line between a hero and villain then.
Aha.
Both kind of everything. 'Cause yeah.
I think it depends on the framing. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, right? Because the heroes and the villains, they both have made choices, and those choices have affected people, whether in a positive or negative way. But they made the choices that they made because it aligned with what they believed in. Now, I think that if they have good intentions, they could be seen as a hero, even if they do things the wrong way, or if they do bad things.
Do you guys remember in Avengers Age of Ultron how Tony Stark accidentally created Ultron, and he said that his intent was he wanted to build a suit of armor to wrap it around the world and protect it, because losing that alien invasion, that's the end game, and like we'll lose if we don't have something to deal with that. And then you remember what did Steve Rogers, what did Iron Man, what did the embodiment of the noble perception of the perfect hero, what was his answer to Tony when Tony said we would lose?
I never saw that.
He said, we'll like fight or something until...
He said, well, like when it happens, we'll fight together, we'll stand together. And then Tony's answer was, we'll lose. And then Steve's answer is, we'll do that together too. That's not an acceptable outcome when you are literally talking about the end of the world. Oh, we're all in this together. I guess we'll just all die together. And Tony's answer was, nah, F that. I'm going to do something all of you disagree with. All of you would tell me this is a bad idea, but I'm at least going to try to save everybody in front of me, even if it might end horribly. I'm going to at least try, because the alternative is rolling over and dying. Or fighting a losing battle instead of taking at least one shot, no matter how horrible of a shot it is, at potentially coming out of this.
I mean, yeah, that was kind of a... I mean, I don't know if that's a hero problem or just a...
It's a hero complex.
Dumb idea.
It's a hero complex. No, Steve Rogers is Captain America. He is what happens when you decide that ideologically you want to be perceived and seen to be good and to do right. Tony wants to do right in spite of himself, in spite of not even believing that he is a good person. He does everything because he doesn't believe he's a good person, because he doesn't believe he's deserving, and because he believes that everyone is probably more deserving than him. And the thing is, he's willing to cross lines, be alienated, be alone, lose everything to protect everyone. And he's willing to be perceived to be wrong, to be the bad guy, to not have the support of the people he loves the most, in order to make sure that they're around to hate his ass later.
So what's the difference between him, Iron Man, and like a Thanos? Because Thanos did it for the same... You could argue that he did it for the same sort of reason. He wanted to protect like half of the universe because for whatever reason he thought it wasn't sustainable or whatever.
For Tony, For Tony, he wants to protect everybody at the expense of nobody else except himself and anybody that might directly stand in his way. And that's the extent of it. And even them, he's trying to preserve them as much as he's allowed to. Thanos does not have that line and is not trying to preserve everyone. He's trying to preserve life as an abstract concept. He's trying to preserve the continuity of life as in a distant, abstract way with no empathy. Compassion maybe, but not empathy, because it's abstract to him. Versus Tony is not, he's trying to sacrifice as little as possible. Thanos was not trying to do that, and Tony was willing to, again, sacrifice as little as possible and, like, essentially even buy more time. Thanos wanted to put a pause kind of on everything. And the other problem is Thanos was limited by the scope of his imagination. The way the Infinity Gauntlet works is it cannot solve a problem that you yourself cannot conceive of a method. It can only use a method that you yourself can think of. Thanos' only method for fixing the problems in the universe was subtraction. That's why it's like, oh, well, create infinite resources for everybody then. He can't, because he can't imagine and conceive of, and no one could conceive of infinite resources. It's infinite. So it can't do that. And so he could only solve the problem by a method that he himself understands, but just at a larger scale. So basically eliminating people he understands, and he's done that before. This would just scale it instantaneously.
Yeah. What Chef in the chat, he says, history is written by the victors, which is quoting what Roberto said earlier. And so one could say heroes are defined by the victors and the villains by the losers.
Ooh, I like that.
What do you think about that, Audrey?
I mean, yeah. But
So,
I don't think
doesn't
the
this...
victor necessarily means hero. Like,
but I'm saying, but it's, again, in the eyes of history, whoever won is the good guy. Because clearly,
So it comes down to the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, remember, think about it like this. What do people always want to believe? They're like, well, if you won, then God was on your side. Not making this religious or political. I'm just saying what people say. It's a historical thing. Is that, oh, God's on our side. Everyone believes that. But then whoever won is who they feel that God picked or favored. And they can't reconcile that you lost because you had a bad fucking general. You lost because your morale or your discipline was bad, or your supply line sucked, or you didn't have the financial backing. You didn't win because of some divine intervention. You won because you were better resourced. You had more to lose. You fought harder. Victory is meritocratic. It's not moral. Martial victories don't favor any morality. They favor your abilities on the battlefield and the circumstances of the battleground. They don't, it's not down to who deserved it in terms of a moral argument. It's, I'm stronger, faster, better supplied, better armed, or I had a better strategy. I beat you because you suck, not because you're evil.
I feel like, so Captain Sisko in Deep Space Nine is, he's committed a number of war crimes, and he has some unconventional methods for achieving results, which has gotten him into trouble with Starfleet a number of times and the Federation. But still, he continues to be framed as the hero.
The results benefited the Federation. The results benefited Starfleet.
Even though he's threatened to essentially annihilate entire planets.
It all worked out for them.
Civilizations.
Again, I don't agree with necessarily morally what he did, but can I debate the results?
Right.
And by the way, if I'm one of the civilizations he threatened, of course I think he's the villain. Because if I'm a sheep grazing in the field, I'm like, oh, fuck these wolves. They're the bad guys. They're evil. That's why we talk about them. They're the damn boogeyman. But if I'm a wolf and I'm a wolf cub and I'm hungry, I'm like, Mom, Dad, where are the sheep? We need to eat. It's like, is it so wrong? Is it so wrong that we need to live and that we want to live? And they're right there. They penned them up. We need to live and we need to eat. And we don't bear them any malice, but they're there. And we only take the sick ones or the ones who are too weak to fight back. They get to keep breeding. They kept the thing, but we need to eat too. We need to live too. From the wolf's perspective, they're doing nothing wrong. From the wolf's perspective, they're doing what they need to do to survive, and there's no evil. There's no ill intent. Yes, they want to murder the shit out of these sheep, but not out of maliciousness, but out of a need. And the sheep, they want to fight back and they want to think, but at the same time, you know what? The sheep can be evil because they're not fighting hard for the weak. They're fleeing and preserving themselves, and the weak or the elderly or the young, they're left to fend for themselves. It's like, well, we want to live. Everything just wants to live. And so the sheep, are they evil for abandoning their own and not using their numbers to like kick the wolves to death? Because they probably could, and so they're sacrificing one of their own so that the greater numbers can live. Are the wolves evil for doing what they need to do to survive? Like, who's the villain and who's the hero is down to perception. To that wolf cub, their mom and dad is the hero because the mom and dad went out and provided for them. And to the sheep, these wolves that come for them and for their people are their boogeyman. They're the devil. For the sheep herder who's trying to make a living and pay his landlord, the wolves are the devil.
Yeah.
For the wolves, the man is the devil because he hunts their kind and he keeps them from what they need to feed their family.
I think it's like all about intent. Like I feel like the hero types, it could involve, like, you know, if it's the wolf, like it could involve killing the sheep, and that's fine. They're still heroes to the, you know, to their family or whatever.
So the cubs.
I mean, but that's not intent. Everyone's intent here is to take care of their people. The men in the field want to provide and pay their landlord, and they need to tend their sheep and protect their sheep. The sheep want to protect the entire herd and their own individual lives. The wolves want to feed their family and they want to eat and they want to survive. Everyone's just trying to do their best here, but they're forced into a scenario where they have to do it at the expense of someone else. And nobody here, none of them are trying to be unkind or to be evil or to hurt anyone, but their preservation comes at the expense of somebody else. So do they sacrifice themselves and their family, or do they inflict something upon someone and visit something upon someone else?
I guess like a villain that would be someone that goes out of their way and unnecessarily, like, without any like real reason, not for self-preservation, not to like help for their own kind or whatever, like literally just because they're terrible. Like
Batman fits
wanna, like,
that description.
kill people for no reason, so that's a villain.
Batman's a villain. Batman's a villain. I say that
But he
as a fan
fights
of
for
Batman.
justice.
No, Batman's a villain. Batman's a villain. Batman is a
Batman
billionaire.
is a man on revenge.
Batman's a villain because Batman, and I love Batman, but let me play devil's advocate here. Batman's a villain. Here's why. From the perspective of anybody in Gotham, you could argue Batman's a villain, but you would need the context of knowing that Batman is Bruce Wayne, but they don't know that, but we do. But anyone could deduce that Batman must be rich. All right. Rather than taking his absurd resources and his unlimited disposable time and getting appropriate therapy and going through every method of therapy possible to make himself whole, Batman devoted his entire life to pursuing skill sets that would allow him to be a vigilante and to wage his own personal war and vendetta on the streets of Gotham, and all the collateral damage that goes along with that. In fact, the greatest supervillains in Gotham are all people who are essentially collateral damage and Batman's victims at some point for the most part. And if they're not victims of Batman's vigilantism, they're victims of Bruce Wayne's negligence in using his wealth and resources to save his city so in such a way that nobody like him as a young man will lose their parents because of some punk with a gun. So instead of in Gotham eliminating crime with his nearly unlimited resources by either one, using all that gadgetry, all the gadgetry that Wayne Tech Enterprises has, they didn't decide to entrust it to the Gotham police force. With all of his money, Bruce Wayne didn't create super PACs that would end the corruption of the police force, the district attorney. All of these are public figures. All of these are elected officials. And guess what? We all know how the money flow works. And the thing is, if Bruce Wayne had built super PACs, if Bruce Wayne had donated funds, if he had filled the war chest of politicians that were good, earnest, hardworking citizens of Gotham, there's no the crime families combined can't even get a tenth of Bruce Wayne's wealth at any point. So even the crime families of Gotham, the crime families of Gotham are peasants compared to Bruce Wayne. So there's no way they could run the ad revenue to an official that would be in their pocket versus in Bruce Wayne's pocket. So he could literally put good, hardworking people into every position, eliminate corruption, give the police force all of the Batman gadgetry and tech, and then make sure that they have good people who don't abuse that power, because he can just yank the purse strings anytime he wants. And on top of all of that, he has the money and capital to create infrastructure programs. Why the hell? Again, I'm not telling him how to use his wealth, but I'm saying he has the goal of, I, as Batman, want to eliminate crime in Gotham. I'm going to protect my city. He literally could do and scale that more efficiently as a multi-billionaire than as a one-man army recruiting a bunch of orphans to fight hand to fist in the middle of the streets with crazed clowns and mafia bosses. He's, as you said, Audrey, he's doing something completely unnecessary and extravagant for personal reasons, and he's making people collateral damage in the process.
It sounds like you need to write this comic.
Actually,
You
it's
need to
already
create
been
this
explored by multiple writers. This
Okay,
is
not explored. I mean a billionaire who just does everything and fixes society. Because we can't fix Batman.
Okay, that I could write.
Batman's is already there, and
Yeah.
and if he did everything that you just said, there would be no Batman. There would be no story.
There'd be no need for Batman. There'd be no need for Batgirl. There'd
Okay,
be no
I
need
know,
for
but
Robin.
we need a story. Roberto,
Yeah.
do you not understand the concept
Oh, I
of
understand
the
what
story?
you're
there
saying,
needs
yes,
to be
like-
conflict, and like it wouldn't exist. Batman wouldn't exist. Like the story.
You know, in stories where Lex Luthor is the good guy, he actually fixes everything. If Superman doesn't come to Earth, Lex Luthor steps up and becomes the hero of humanity. Because his biggest problem was his hatred of Superman as an alien invader held up as the ideal of a god, and that humans couldn't raise themselves up and solve their own problems. That was his big manifesto of why he hates Superman. Because he wanted to be Earth's savior, and he wanted a human to do it.
Now, Captain America came about in a time when the nation really needed a hero in real life. We're not talking about a comic book. I mean, like a real in history.
We needed
right?
an ideal. We needed an ideal.
We needed something to get behind.
Yeah.
I feel like the heroes that we have now are based on those issues that we had then. I feel like we need a new hero. And it seems like you have an idea for this hero, Roberto.
The problem is that in our society, the wealthy and the elite are demonized as not compassionate, not sympathetic. You can't understand our struggles if you don't have them, which I understand where people get the idea and what they think about with that. But again, it ignores the origin story of most people who are financially successful, because again, the origin story of how someone addresses their hardship matters, because it's a reflection of their character and it's a reflection of their ideals and their intent. Audrey, you talked about the nature of intent, but it's also a matter of intent is both a matter of your origin story and also what is your stated end, because there's an end, like the end actually in human behavior and psychology. we do believe in a utilitarian point of view. We do believe the end justifies the means. The problem is not everyone agrees with the ends that someone is choosing. And again, the means by which they disagree with it if they feel or believe or perceive it to come at their expense, or if it contradicts what they believe to be the appropriate moral authority. And they say, you can get to that end result, just how we debate how you do it. We debate your methodology. We're like, could you do it and not be what we find repugnant or evil or or even just uncomfortable? And so why can't a billionaire or trillionaire, quote unquote, save us? Because again, the problem is that even if we were to start to try to get to the ends justify the means, the thing is, people would quibble a lot about how this person goes about it. They couldn't stop them, mind you. They couldn't stop them, but they would say, you're doing it wrong. They would say, why don't you do it this way? They would say, why is this your first priority instead of this your priority? My needs or my constituency or my struggle is more deserving first or second or third. Why is this a bigger priority? And even if you explained or you rationalized or you reasoned, they wouldn't feel anything but amenity towards you or hatred toward you until and unless they become the priority, and only when they get what they want. Because remember, just like we said earlier, it's a matter of perception. It's a matter of your point of view. If something is good for you, it's the good. If someone does something for you, they're the hero. Even if other people attack them and debate how they did it, you see it even now when people are dragged into court or they're brought up. There are people who will defend someone and say, well, they were always good to me, or I never experienced that of them, or I didn't know that, my husband was a serial killer and everything like that. He was always so gentle. He was always so kind. The neighbors always, oh, he was so nice. He always helped out with the block parties or the barbecue. It's whatever your experience is of somebody frames your perception of them. And then when another person or another group of people says they had a different experience, it's irreconcilable for you. And so the problem with the theoretical billionaire saving us would be, until they get around to everybody, somebody would have something to say. And it only takes one loose cannon to derail the whole thing. In a lot of communities, you'll see a lot of rappers and R&B artists and people who want to give back, and they try to go back to their communities and they try to help as many people as they can. But guess what? It's always some punk or some gang that ruins it for everybody, decides that they want to take everything that person has right then and there, and then they don't get to give back and spread it around to everybody else because somebody decides that it's not good enough and they want theirs now.
Dang.
know what I was going to say.
She beat you to it. She's a villain. She didn't hesitate.
I think it's kind of, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's there's a lot of it comes back down to the same thing, right? I mean, even if you framed this
I guess
new
you could
age
just
hero,
declare yourself that person could just declare themselves a supervillain, and that'd be the more interesting take. It's Megamind. Megamind saved he saved Metro City. Megamind saved Metro City. Mm-hmm. He didn't do anything evil. He styled himself as the evil villain, and all he did was, what did he do? He cleaned up all the litter because he found it like disgusting and inconvenient, and so he eliminated all the litter. Because he was the biggest villain, all crime came to an end because no villain, no criminal, no burglar wanted to cross this evil mastermind who defeated Metro Man. No one wanted to take the risk.
Strategy.
And what did he do? He cleaned up the city. He made it better. He eliminated crime. And then when the city was threatened by a true narcissistic, deranged lunatic with superpowers, he took him out. And again, the thing is, all he ever wanted was acceptance, but he was always framed as the villain, and eventually he just decided to believe it, even though none of his intentions were to actually harm, kill, maim. He never successfully really hurt anybody.
Right.
And when he did, all he had was regret, and he was like, oh, if only I could undo it. If only I could go back to the way things were. You were the only person I felt understood me. When he defeated his quote unquote hero.
I guess it's not as exciting or as entertaining for some rich girl to walk up to a place that needs money and drop a couple G's, as opposed to showing up in a mask and a cape and kicking and punching some people.
Well, again, to Audrey's point about intent, do you want to feel good and be perceived as special, or do you want to make things better for people?
But it doesn't matter. I'm talking story-wise here.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, let's go that
If you were to write up a comic and just had like this rich girl walk up to a place and deposit a couple G's in a bag, as opposed to showing up with a cape and a mask.
Oh no, that's the whole
punching some people in the face.
Superheroes. It's because it's kind of like an idealistic version.
Actually, you just gave me the kind of story I would like to write. I would actually write about a female tech billionaire.
I take 5%.
Philanthropist that's often judged by the tabloids because of her lifestyle and because of her choices and because of how she dates and her public not PC scandals and whatnot. And she lives in a world where there are vigilantes who are lauded by the media, but they cause more problems than they solve. And eventually, as the richest woman in the world, she decides to literally just start fixing shit behind the scenes. And that the thing that makes it interesting is the action, the superhero nonsense isn't going to be the interesting, exciting part that I would script. It would be the idea that she's doing the political intrigue of literally doing the cutthroat lady boss, destroying and dismantling and clowns and assholes and just really doing all those secret hostile takeover buyouts. And the thing is, it would be the dialogue. It'd be like the newsroom or the morning show. It'd be like Aaron Sorkin wrote the dialogue, and that the intrigue is literally she defeats the real villains of society who don't wear masks in public. They don't wear gaudy masks in public. Their mask is their PR team. Their mask is their fake philanthropic ventures, their charities that are really their piggy bank.
Who's the audience for this? Who's going to be reading this?
Just sell it to HBO.
Okay, no, but who's the audience? Who's your target? The HBO is going to want to know who the target is.
The target is all of these very angry, disenfranchised millennials and Gen Zers that are sitting at home with nothing to do. ranting about eating the rich.
But how are you going to reach them, Roberto?
HBO has a marketing budget.
I'm not talking about
you trigger them.
I'm saying with the story. How are you going to reach them
subversion.
Without it being boring?
It's subversion because you have the superhero thing. You have the superhero thing, a world where there's actually vigilantes, and we wouldn't call them we would talk about how the public lauds them as heroes, but you'd have these vigilantes, right? And the thing is, I could even start it out as she started out as one of these vigilantes, and then there were a lot of these public outcries, not against the vigilantes, but again, kind of similar more or less to what we have now. And she decides that being a vigilante is counterproductive and stupid because she sees the people that they're trying to save,
right,
or just collateral damage. And she has that wake-up call.
She realizes the hypocrisy.
She realizes the hypocrisy. She realizes the virtue signaling. She realizes and she sees one of her peers posing for the selfies and doing the bullshit and talking about their clout and literally gamifying their vigilantism for social media and all this bullshit. And she realizes that everybody is fake. Everybody is posturing. Everybody is literally virtue signaling in this exaggerated reality. And that she decides to, and what she decides to do is she decides that screw it, she's going to change the game, and she's going to actually do something, and that she decides that she's like, because again, they don't know her identity, and so her like so-called friends are even talking shit about her without knowing it's her, and judging her without knowing it's her, and they like, it's all this bullshit. And so my twist and my thing is, she decides to literally publicly unmask herself, and then, by the way, because she's like rich, there's not really even any consequences for her. And she proves the point, and she even makes that point. And she's like, but she uses it. She decides that she's done playing a hero, and to actually see justice done, she's willing to be perceived as a villain, to be perceived as one of the evil rich, to be perceived as the entitled spoiled brat. And she decides that that's her new and she decides that's her new mask. Her new mask is the spoiled, hedonistic brat billionaire. But then she's going to use her power, and even though she'll never get credit, she's going to use her power, and she's going to dismantle all the things that she believes and perceives and sees behind the scenes because of her access to be truly wrong, and fight the evils that you can't touch hiding behind a mask.
So what's the action actually happening here? So there's the plot. The main plot is her being the villain, like the what's in the foreground. But in the background, the subplot, we have her actually doing good things with her money.
But through the most ruthless, cutthroat, expedient method, even requiring extortion, blackmail,
right?
Not going so far as murder, because again, she's going through she's gonna Count of Monte Cristo all the evil rich fuckers and dismantle their lives one piece at a time, expose them, and it's all the things she does to get her hands dirty that result in good things for all of the other people. But again, even the things where her fingerprints are on certain things, it just really makes her look really, really bad, and people continue to talk shit and continue to demonize her while she simultaneously makes their lives better.
Audrey, do you have any input on this character that we're creating here?
Great. You need to like trigger people into reading/watching it.
Did you say you want to trigger people?
Make fun of the classic hero.
It's not a make fun of, it's a dark deconstruction.
But like, if you can kind of like, if I'm like a viewer and I'm gonna go watch a movie or something about that, I feel like if you were to really, if you're to get people intrigued, you'd be like, what you think a hero is wrong.
You need to trick people, is what she's saying.
Yeah, no. Maybe I'd help you guys help me workshop a hook for that. Mm-hmm. But I think the way that you trigger people is you literally take a lot of and superimpose a lot of some things without really truly 1,000% commenting on all of them. You superimpose some things of our current society onto the characters and cast, meaning you make them somewhat familiar, because I would basically make her in many ways an analog of because I don't want to say a parody, because it's like, it's not negative, it's like, but I'd make her a parallel or an analog or a take on a reimagining of a Jeff Bezos-like person, but maybe somebody that was younger in like a Mark Zuckerberg type age, but with qualities of like Sarah Blakely, you know?
Right.
I would, because again, the motif and the backdrop here is that she is supposed to embody everything that is wrong, that a lot of people in our society believes is wrong with, wrong with our society and wrong with the social order and wrong with the elites. She's supposed to ironically embody that, but that's all perception, but with no substance of knowing her as a person. And again, the judgment of, when you don't even see me, when I'm behind this mask, you're talking shit about the person I actually am, and you don't even know that person, and yet you're supposed to be my friend, my comrade, my ally, and you don't even know that you're saying all this shit about me to my face and judging me when I've been here right by your side and been, in this fight with you. And that's one of those disconnects, and I think it's a message and an allegory for the fact that we don't know each other, we don't know anybody. Like those are
I
things.
think this is definitely a fun project. It's not something that I've seen as far as superheroes, because like I said, it feels like the ideals and like the motivation and the mission behind modern day superheroes right now is still the same.
Yeah.
As
but
they
they're
were
also
40, 50 years ago, which
they're
is
these
fighting for
paragons.
justice,
And
right?
they're paragons. But the thing is, we don't question, are they on the right side? Like, we barely touched on that in some of the Captain America movies. It's like, well, what if you're on the wrong side?
Yeah. So I think creating a character like this, which is a little bit more rooted in everyday real life, is interesting, especially if she's set up to appear
and
as
again,
the
no
villain.
superpowers, vigilante. It's like not superheroes, it's vigilanteism.
Right, vigilantes.
Yeah.
So what Chef in the chat says that this is an interesting topic and perfect research because he is currently writing an original superhero.
Stealing your idea?
Yeah, don't steal our idea. Audrey will come after you.
I'll show you what a villain looks like.
But thank you for joining us. Thanks for joining us, Sweat Chef. For those of you who are listening, we are live every Thursday at 8 p.m. at youtube.com/noassemblypod. So subscribe, hit that bell, turn on the notifications, and be there every Thursday so that you can join us and also be inspired and get research for your next big screenplay.
Romina, a lot of our audience doesn't know that you actually had a background in Hollywood and that whole scene, and then
Hollyweird.
And Audrey, you're like a filmmaker. I'm really curious about you guys don't have to piggyback on even my idea if you don't want to, but or even if you do, but I'm curious about I'm curious about what you guys' idea would be about flipping the script on the ideas of heroes and villains, and how would you introduce the hero-villain mythos in today's times and make it relevant?
Didn't Joker kind of do that, like, a little bit?
A little bit.
Like, they were kind of playing on the, this is the bad guy, but we're going to make you feel bad for him.
And that the downtrodden are the quote-unquote unsung heroes?
Yeah. And, I mean, that movie was intense, but it was good. It was a different type of story that I think is actually becoming more popular because people are fed up. Or not fed up. Everyone likes a good superhero movie, but there's so many of them, there needs to be...
But they're all meta, and this was like a deconstruction of that.
Yeah. I think it's a good timing to make a movie like that right now. I think people want that.
One of the things that I like about that idea and that I'd want to take in my own is I would want my thing to make people uncomfortable as hell. And I'd want my thing to basically deconstruct the concept of innocence itself. I would want my character I'd want my main female character, I'd want her to keep being disillusioned, and everything she does is a result of being disillusioned and saying, I believed these things. I believed these things so strongly that I put my life on the line for them, and I feel betrayed by my ideals. I feel that everything I believed in, I've now been presented with its falseness. It's been held up to my eyes, and I thought that was true. Because again, she thought that was true before. She thought, I'm spoiled, I'm rich, I'm going to go out here, I'm going to do some good. And then she realized that she's not doing good, and that the people alongside her, they're not really doing any good. They're just pacifying people. It's just another form of bread in circuses. Oh, I thought us and being rich and giving our money to charity, oh no, that was the bread. And now she then tries and fights in the streets and, puts on a mask, and it's like, oh, this is just the circus. This is just the sideshow. This is just a distraction. And it's even blinded me to the reality of people's actual suffering. I don't actually understand it any better than I did before. And then she goes to yet another extreme. I want to introduce the concept of seeking identity only to not find it. Alienation. I want to find every single way I can find to literally rob a character of their naivete and innocence and make them continue to soil their hands time after time after time, always hoping to grasp onto something real, only not to have it, because I'm an asshole in terms of the way that I write.
Also, it provides more dimension. I think it is interesting posing characters as one thing and then having them turn into something. I mean, they kind of did that with, with Billy in Stranger Things. Where they really painted him as a villain because he got in the way so often from stopping our so-called heroes. But then ended up just what he was fighting for was himself, because of his childhood and his upbringing and all this stuff. So was he really the villain? Was he the hero? He certainly sacrificed himself in order to save the heroes. So does that now turn him into a hero, even though he was
a martyr,
essentially a douche?
Do you have to be a good person to be a hero?
Oh, Roberto, throwing the hard questions.
It's like what we were saying earlier. It's like
If
you could be a bad person and maybe, but if your intentions are to like help people.
What if it's not even that your intentions are to help people as much as what you do will help so many people, but like let's say literally let's say that you just wanted to stop the actual bad guy and that you know that other people will benefit, but stopping the actual bad guy is personal for you. But this person poses a serious threat like to the world. But you're not really doing it for them. You're doing it because, and you're not hurting other people necessarily in the process that don't deserve it. You're just going through them, their criminal organization. You're taking out nothing but bad guys. People would say deserved it, right? But you're not doing it with the thought of all the little people. You're doing it because this person is your sworn enemy or did you a personal wrong, and they did a personal wrong to many, many, many people. And this isn't about avenging them, but they will be avenged, and there will be no more future victims when you're done, and there were going to be future victims. Again, does that disqualify you from being a hero because you did take out the bad guy? You did save all those people. You weren't thinking about it when you did it, but it did go down that way.
See, that just makes me angry because, like, I really didn't like Billy.
I think my main character, I think I want her to almost be pathological in the sense of she wants to fight injustice. It's pathological for her to fight like, you know, what she believes to be those who hurt others, you know, for their own benefit, you know, that are exploitive, that are like, you know, cruel, that are like, she wants to, quote unquote, it's more important, I think, that be pathological for her to hurt the bad guys than to help the little people. I think that that's part of also her ability to embrace being a villain, in the sense that good will come of what I do, but for her, it's more about the elimination of what she thinks is evil than the elevation of what she thinks is good. Does that make sense when I say it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pathologically wanting to take out bad people doing bad things being more important to somebody than, quote unquote, like protecting people is a consequence of that. And it's one that they understand, but if it's not their primary motivation, does that make them, does that disqualify them from being a hero?
Right. No, I don't think it does, because then wouldn't that mean that anybody who is in the military, any veteran who has become a hero, who was just doing their job, or who might have just been at the, for lack of better phrasing, the right time at the right place, and happened to save some people, they are now a war hero. So it's not that they were doing it with the intention of trying to be
achieve that
or
specific end, right?
Right.
They were
that notoriety.
the
It was just, right. It's just that they just had a job to do, and they weren't thinking at the time. It was just do.
So I think it does come down from our perspective, whether it's just a matter of our social conditioning that we believe, I guess, or we come to a consensus. Don't let me put words in anybody's mouth here, but like, I guess we've come to the conclusion that the ends justify the means. The results matter. That like,
unless they're like raging lunatics, who their end is to just kill people.
Well, no. When we say the ends, we
all
mean
right.
the
Well,
results.
we're not talking about psychopaths, so
we're talking about. Well, actually, I mean, it's results though. I mean, Dexter was like, is Dexter like?
Is Dexter a
villain?
vigilante?
He's a vigilante, but is he a villain?
Who's Dexter?
Oh
my god. Okay. Dexter is a series that Cinemax did, I believe. No, Showtime. Showtime did a series, and it ran for about 7 seasons of this character Dexter. Dexter is a forensic blood splatter analyst as his day job.
Okay, you're getting too specific, Roberto.
All right. Anyway, but I have to explain that he's tied to the police. I have to explain that he's tied to the police.
No,
he's a serial killer who kills serial killers.
All right, thank you.
He's a serial killer that kills serial killers.
He doesn't kill anybody else.
For a purpose, right? Like to help to stop the crazy serial killer.
Well, no, he does it to feed his addiction. He does it to feed his own addiction because he kills because he wants to, but he justifies it because his father.
Well, not only just because he wants to. It goes a lot deeper than that. It's because of his trauma, from a childhood trauma. He witnessed the murder
of his mother.
Right. When he was a child, and so because of that, because of the trauma, he's has broken. Like this. He's essentially broken.
Well, and his purpose is, even though he might be messed up a little bit, he's still doing it to like. He's found a way to curb his.
Well, he was trained.
He was trained by his father and by a psychiatrist to channel his desire and need to kill into only killing people that deserve it. And he was given a strict code and a strict moral code, not because he can, conceive of a conscience. He has a conscience, weirdly. Like, they explore a lot of the depth of his like whole thing. But again, his ability versus a normal person's, apparently, like, normal people aren't that moral if you really think about it. They really only respect consequences. He's just honest about that fact, whereas the rest of us posture. And that's basically what the psychology of the show comes down to, is the rest of us just are lawful good. The rest of us are just lawful good, but lawful good misses a lot of people, falls between the cracks, and allows for a lot of bad shit. He has a standard that's a lot more rigid than lawful good as it is, and allows him to deal with the people who get through those cracks by extraordinary means. Because a lot of the people he gets are people who get off on a technicality in the system, or that system never even caught. And so that's a big part of it. And his standard of proof and guilt and innocence is extraordinarily high. It's beyond reproach. So
to come back to the original question, Audrey, do you think that, let's just say in the most basic way, a serial killer who's killing serial killers, is he the villain or is he a hero? I mean, based on...
I think, like, in that situation, Dexter or whatever would be the hero, and the random serial killers would be the villains.
He's in the series definitely considered to be the protagonist. So there is that. In storytelling, someone can be a protagonist without necessarily being the hero. I think me and you talked about this before, Romina, that someone can be the protagonist without being the hero of their own story, per se.
Right.
Well, I guess why I said he was a hero is because he was doing it with, like,
he's doing
better
it for
intention.
He's doing it for mostly he's motivated by selfishness, but he has good results.
He's found a way to curb it for the outcome of good. Versus the random serial killers who are killing people for no reason, so would be villain.
It ends up bettering society. So is our definition of a hero when somebody's actions, even if selfishly motivated, like Batman, for example, or Dexter, results in the betterment of the society? Batman's problem is his actions don't actually better society. They are intended to better society, and they don't accomplish the goal. Gotham is still a shithole. Batman has failed.
Batman is just not
Good at his job.
Yeah, no.
Batman is bad at his job.
Batman is bad at a lot of things.
Bruce Wayne is bad at his job
here.
too. Bruce Wayne is a horrible CEO. Batman fails Gotham. He saves the world, mind you, with the Justice League over and over and over again. Batman can save the world, but not a single city. He's really bad at his chosen thing. Like, he's a great hero. Yeah, Batman's a hero to the entire world, myself included.
Right.
But if I was a citizen of Gotham, screw the Batman. If I'm a citizen of Gotham, screw the Batman. He's failed miserably if I'm a citizen of Gotham. But as a citizen of the world, thank you, Batman. Thank you, Justice League. But if I am a citizen of Gotham, like, screw that guy, the Gotham PD, all y'all. Y'all failed. Y'all suck. Like, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah.
Results. Results.
Unless they're not extremely terrible people who just are murderers or something, there's always, it has to be considered from what their end goal is.
I'll give you a scenario because someone, Joanna, brought it up in the chat. Light Yagami from the anime Death Note short version. A notebook that you write anybody's name in. That person dies. A high schooler gets it and decides that he's going to eliminate crime, so he just writes the names of criminals over and over and over. Within 5 years, he's killed 250,000 people, and all of the people from the most wanted, a lot of people that slipped through the cracks. The police are after him, though, and the FBI and private detectives are after him because they don't think he should be able to be judge, jury, and executioner. But war has actually stopped over the course of that 5 years. Crime has been reduced by 78%. And it's all because of him writing names in a notebook. And so he's decided that that makes him God. And he's playing God. But if you're a citizen in the world, as terrifying as it is that somebody can kill anybody with a name and a picture if they want to, if they have your name and a picture that they can write your name down and kill you, that's horrifying. But when you find out that they are only killing criminals and usually the worst of the worst, do you think that person is a hero or a villain?
I think it comes down to what Audrey was saying a few minutes ago, which is if it has a positive outcome to society as a whole, then that defines them as a hero, regardless of the methods they use.
Does it matter if they did it outside of our established rules and our established moral codes? If they take extraordinary means, again, an individual taking life and death into their own hands and deciding who lives, who dies, that's against our moral codes, it's against our laws, it's against our ethical standards. Right. But the net result, 78% reduction in crime and no war in 5 years.
Yeah,
but there's so many. I don't know. I feel like that's too extreme. I don't think that guy.
I'm just saying that was the scenario that was played out in the.
Alone dude.
I don't think Audrey's a fan. Audrey's not a fan.
You'd have to watch Death Note on Netflix, and it's actually a really good anime. It's actually a really good anime. And again, the reason you get the notebooks are powered by gods of death. That's the whole gimmick. But you know.
Well, you should not be messing with that.
Yeah, no, he's messing with powers beyond.
There's like a let things naturally occur. Like you can't play God.
But they go badly.
Bad.
But everything goes badly. Human beings haven't let things naturally occur. We built artifices. We raised satellites into the heavens.
For that specific case with the guy with the death notebook, I feel like that's a little, bit too much. Like into
if you had a notebook, and you could decide who, like you could literally.
I would bury that.
So you would not.
I would bury.
You would not look up the names of the worst wanted criminals still at large from the FBI, murderers. You wouldn't write down the names of known terrorists. You wouldn't write those names down.
No, I don't think I would.
Romina?
Wow. I am very. This is an interesting question for me in particular because I like to try to be as hands-off as possible, and I feel like the less people get involved, the better it is. And I guess it's hard because like I think about any rapist that's still like out there, and I'm like, well, you know, I want to write their name down. But then but there's so many people whose names are on those lists who aren't actually guilty.
Yeah.
I don't trust any human being, myself included, with that power. And even though I would absolutely be tempted, and I could absolutely rationalize it, and I could absolutely justify all the reasons that I should use the Death Note, and that I could make the world better by using the Death Note, I would probably destroy the notebook, because I wouldn't even bother to confirm its power before doing it. I would take it that it's an absolute certainty that this book can do what it says it does, and I would destroy it to keep it out of human hands. Because in the hands of someone who is less ambitious and less strict in their values than me, it's an absolute catastrophe. And therefore, I would destroy it, because humans can't be allowed to have that kind of power. And that answer probably surprises everybody, including you guys. That's the conclusion that I come to, is that
I thought you were gonna go around like as soon as I said like I'd bury it, I was like, he's about to go off.
I wouldn't bury it, because that's not good enough. I would destroy it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. The first thing I thought was just
I would destroy it, assuming it can be destroyed. Assuming it can be destroyed, I would destroy it. And if anybody besides me ended up with knowledge of the notebook, I would have to be forced to use it to write their names down to and that would be the exception. I'd have to write their names down so that I absolutely know that the secret of the notebook's existence is preserved, and then I'd have to get rid of it.
But then wouldn't there be conspiracies about why these people died?
No, because you can write down the cause of death and the time of death as well, as long as it's something that can physically happen in reality. It'll occur in that way, which means you can condition it all to look like accidents. That's why you should watch this thing. It's actually really this honor student who gets the notebook is a genius, and he uses it in very clever and inventive ways, and he ends up in a cat and mouse psychological game with the world's greatest detective, and their problem is they're trying to confirm each other's identities, because he goes by a fake name, so he doesn't have the guy's real name, he only has his face. And while the detective suspects that it's him, he can't prove it. He has to be able to prove it beyond a shadow of doubt within the bounds of actual evidence. And it's a really great psychological thriller.
Nice.
I think with that, we should probably start wrapping this up. I think if you guys have any last things to say.
Would we already, I guess, did we come to a conclusion as to whether I specifically am a hero or a villain?
Well, I guess then you are a hero, because your intentions would be good, even if it would mean doing a Thanos snap or something.
We've converted Audrey.
My version of a Thanos snap is that I would, if I had the Infinity,
or a hero then, because but he's also kind of psychopathic and a murderer. Also that.
If I had an all-powerful wish-granting device, I do give the world an ultimatum. Either I use my MacGuffin and we all are going to live good, earnest lives in a unified fashion, but it's going to be more or less what I've decided that looks like, or I use my all-powerful MacGuffin and it's over, game over. So literally, one world where we're all united, one world or no world. You have binary choices, one world or no world. And I know that's a villain-like thing to do, and it's also the approach of a villain specifically in one of my favorite books, but he's actually an asshole and an actual villain. But the thing is, the hero ends up doing almost the exact same thing later.
So
but
what hero's end goal is world domination?
The hero who actually wants what's best for everybody.
Let's see what is what's best for everyone.
I've already determined that conclusion through.
Great thinks that colonizing would make everything better.
Here's the thing: he was right.
you have to if again, I mean, I think this comes back to
if
what
you
I
come
was
to a
saying,
scientific
which
or
is-
mathematical conclusion that people are going to annihilate themselves or they're going to fail to prevent a catastrophe because they're going to fail to unite to have the think about it like this, there's no existential threat to humanity that we can marshal our unity and resources and that everyone will agree to do what's necessary that would save and preserve the human race. We can't even do that now. Just to literally we have a country so divided that we can't be grounded for 2 or 3 months and obey the grounding long enough to preserve as many people as possible and to preserve the economy. We can't agree to do the things that would help and protect and keep everybody safe, keep the economy safe, because there's things we could do without screwing up the economy. We just don't want to do those things because there's no political advantage or gain for the people who have power. The people who have power to do that would have to risk not being reelected, and yet they could save so many people and help so many people, but they'd have to lose face or lose respect, or they'd have to not do what they like and what they believe in to do right by everybody. And we can't get people to agree to do that. So that means if there's an existential threat to humanity, any of the things we talked about, if there's an alien invasion, if there's a meteor, if there's a even worse plague, if there's zombies, if there's anything that requires a united front, we won't be able to have the resources, the coordination, and the competence and the courage to actually do that. My answer is I would just basically become said existential threat and say, you unite now or don't worry about it.
snap.
One world or no world.
Wow. Roberto's got Roberto's got a missile. He's got a rocket pointed at Earth. And we either unite or
United we stand or divided we fall.
or he throws a rocket our way. All right, I guess
It would be my evil maniacal plan would be that I've actually united in a collaborative effort with Elon. We've built an unholy alliance and we've already strapped rockets to the dark side of the moon to propel it into the Earth at exactly the right speed at exactly the right time.
Nice.
Yeah.
Romina, you are frozen.
Me and
am I
Elon
still frozen?
yes.
Oh.
Yeah, me and Elon made that handshake deal. Romina's still frozen.
Did that fix it? Oh, I see. I look frozen, huh? All right. Well, I mean, do you want to just come up with an outro anyway?
Yeah, I think
I'll
I think
it
I think I got it. But everybody, it's like I promise that once the crisis has abated, once we've fixed literally everything, I'll just wander off pretty much into the wilderness. I have no desire to rule over humanity with my all powerful MacGuffin. I just want to fix everything and walk. I want to fix everything and retire.
Literally what Thanos did, he just retired to his little
But no,
cottage.
he actually did it. He retired to his little cottage and he farmed and he did his gardening and everything like that. That's basically what I do. It's like, all right, I fixed everything. I'm out. I'm like, you got this, and
Fix
I've
is
prepared you to take on the worst the universe has to offer. You have a united humanity. You're strong and you're brave, and you actually have common sense and reason on your side. And you're a united Earth Federation now. You got this. The galaxy is yours. Galaxy is yours.
Outro?
Nah.
All right.
I don't know what's happening with your setup, Romina.
Oh yeah, it's done. It's over. I mean,
Okay,
we're
so-
ending anyway, so it doesn't
All right,
matter.
so I guess I can.
This is just who I am now, Roberto. Accept me for who I am.
All right, I'm ready to go.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the No Assembly Required podcast, a podcast where we talk about nothing but the raging debate between good and evil. And we appreciate you siding with good by subscribing to the channel and by rating and reviewing us in all of your podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher Radio, for those of you who actually listen to that thing. We really do appreciate the support, and we thank you. No audience members were filmed during the no audience members were harmed during the filming of this podcast in front of a live YouTube audience. Only the feelings of my co-host from time to time. And now we leave you and bid you all adieu. Say goodbye to your host, Dark Side Romina, Audrey, the hero of ages, and of course, your Dark Lord of the interwebs, the hero you deserve, but the villain you love to hate, Roberto Blake. Thank you for listening to the No Assembly Required podcast, and we will see you here next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and of course, that means 15 minutes late probably because we're on Roberto Standard Time. And we also want to wish those of you in the United States who celebrate a happy 4th of July, a happy Independence Day. Be safe, wear a goddamn mask, and be well. Thank you for listening.